Hello, and welcome to the live webinar, Global Ready, Multilingual Content Strategies that Improve Global Acquisition Rates, sponsored by Smartling and powered by the Target Marketing Group. I'm Drew James, Publisher, Brand Director, Target Marketing, and the host of today's event. Before we get started, let me take a second to point out the Tips for Attendees widget on your console. It's the blue one with the wrench on it. If you've missed the Tech Tips video we played leading up to the webinar, you can always click this widget for more information. And I'd like to add one special element to today's webinar, is that we would like to encourage social engagement throughout the event, and Smartling will be giving away a special prize gift pack to the best tweet of the day, making sure that you please use hashtag GlobalReady. So that's hashtag GLOBALREADY. Today's presenters are Joe Pullizi, founder, Content Marketing Institute, and Judd Marcelo, Vice President of Marketing, Smartling. Here's a little bit of background on both. Joe Pullizi is founder of Content Marketing Institute, the leading education and training organization for content marketing, which includes the largest in-person content marketing event in the world, Content Marketing World. Joe is the winner of the 2014 John Caldwell Lifetime Achievement Award from the Content Council. Joe's fourth book, Content Inc., will be released September 2015. His third book, Epic Content Marketing, was named one of 5 must-read business books of 2013 by Fortune magazine. You can find Joe on Twitter at Joe Pullizi. If you ever see Joe in person, he'll be wearing orange. Judd Marcelo joined Smartling Inc. in 2015 as Vice President of Smartling, where he oversees all aspects of marketing and demand generation across the globe. As a marketer with 20 years of experience in B2C and B2B marketing technology, Judd has created impact for industry-leading companies Salesforce.com, ExactTarget, eBay Enterprise, Canon Inc., Black & Decker, and Nestle. Prior to Smartling, Judd was Senior Director Marketing EMEA for Salesforce Marketing Cloud, where he oversaw all UK marketing and led the expansion into 3 European markets, Germany, France, and Sweden. Judd's professional success is driven by his exposure to multiple industries in multiple international markets. He has lived in and managed business, brands, and teams throughout the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe, and Australia. Judd has held leadership roles in sales management, product and brand marketing, field marketing, and demand generation. Judd holds an MBA from Macquarie Graduate School of Management in Sydney, Australia, and a BA in marketing from Plymouth State University. Without further ado, I'll hand it off to our speakers.
Drew, thanks so much. This is Joe. So excited to be on the webinar today, and I am the kickoff presenter before we get to Judd on the presentation. And it's interesting. We're going to talk about, I'm kicking off with really talking about the right strategy and talk about then the messaging that goes into that when you look at your content marketing strategy. And then that's why I'm so happy to have Judd on the call today, who's really going to talk about the technology, especially when you're looking at your global implications of your communications and your content. And so in good fashion and good form, I'm going to kick this off with the right strategy. And how do you really look at your own content marketing today? How do you look at your own communications as the differentiator when the marketplace can really copy a lot of the things that you're doing from a product and service standpoint? So I'm going to give you a little bit of history here. I'm going to talk about a little bit of research, and then talk a little bit about content marketing and some of the ways that we like to approach it at Content Marketing Institute, which is really focusing on how you can communicate effectively to the proper niche before you actually go global ready, which Judd will take us home in that, and then we'll get into Q&A toward the end. So let me take you back to when Al Gore created the internet here. And this is the greatest thing ever for marketers, right? Because we could take all our sales and marketing collateral and we could load it up on the web and put that out there. And this was just unbelievable to us because this was, this is how we could sell our products and services now. This is how we could get out our messaging and all the wonderful things that features and benefits that we have about our products and services. And then, of course, we had social media. And this was, again, maybe the second greatest invention for marketers and sales professionals on the planet, because we could then push out all our sales messaging, our product messaging to blogs and wikis and videos, and webinars like this one and everything, and it was just the most fantastic thing ever. And this was the basic, if you wanted to say what was the strategy of the day, and this is actually, believe it or not, a strategy that the majority of companies out there actually still do. Hey, we've got all this corporate stuff we need to sell, and hopefully we put enough of it out in as many different channels as we can and in as many different formats, and we're going to attract and retain customers that way. The problem is that we found out that nobody cares about our stuff. Nobody cares about our products and services except for a very small portion of the buyer's journey. And if you look at any statistics that are out there, you know that whether it's 60, 70, 80% of the buying process is already done before they would ever contact a salesperson, which really, puts us in a difficult situation. And that's why we're thinking, okay, how do we cut through the clutter? We went from 8 channels of communication in 1990 to now there's hundreds of different ways that we can communicate with our customers. And so we've got a lot of people that are saying, hey, maybe this content marketing thing is for us. Maybe what we do is we create valuable, relevant content on a consistent basis, and that's the way that we can attract and retain customers. And just to level set, just so everybody's on the same page with what our definition of content marketing is, we're really looking at, instead of communicating through somebody else's channel, i.e. advertising in some way, we want to become the content. We want to create and distribute our own amazing information and build our own audiences on our own platforms, leveraging other social platforms to do that along the way. And going back to our whole product, service, feature, benefit conversation I talked about a few slides ago, we're not selling in this content. What we're doing, it's closely related to what you sell, but you're really educating people so that they know, like, and trust you enough to buy from you. Media companies have been doing this for a long, long time. But instead of monetizing our content by selling advertising or paid content like media companies do, we're ultimately trying to sell more products and services by taking this kind of a content marketing approach. And if you're in the content marketing industry, business is good. It's probably the hottest area of marketing and advertising out there right now. We're in 9 out of 10 companies, and this is, by the way, if you want to check all of our research out, there's the short link there that you can get all this information. Basically, 9 out of 10 companies are using some form of content marketing, which is great, except for this little statistic. According to our own research as well, the average effectiveness rate is somewhere between 30 and 40%. So as much as I like to see the 9 out of 10 companies using content marketing, the fact that we're only batting about 300, 350, if you're David Ortiz and you're batting 350 for the Boston Red Sox, that's fantastic. But if you're a chief marketing officer or communications professional, you're probably getting fired. So this is not good news. Now, what can we learn from some of the research we put out to help us figure this so we get the right strategy? The one thing we know, there's 2 critical differentiators when we ask a question: are you effective at content? Are you effective at your content marketing versus are you not effective at your content marketing? And when we look at all the different variables, there's 2 that stand out. The first is, do you have a documented content marketing strategy? Those that, by the way, the majority of companies do not. Most of the time it's a verbal strategy. It's not written down. It's not integrated into our overall marketing and communication strategy. So that's a problem. What we do know is if you document your strategy, you actually go through the process of writing it down and writing down the execution process, you're much more likely to be effective at content marketing. So it's 5 times the difference. It's amazing what can happen when you actually make it real. And my good friend Doug Kessler at Velocity Partners always says that if you don't write down your content marketing strategy and approach, it does not exist. You actually have to go through the process of doing this. So that's the first thing. And of course, we're going to talk about this through the rest of the webinar. And the second thing is, once you create the strategy, you can't just stick it in a drawer. You actually have to share it with your team. And what we're finding out is that those teams that meet on a regular basis and closely follow that strategy are much more likely to be effective at their content marketing. So those are the 2 critical things that we want to see. So wherever you're at in your content marketing maturity level, you've got to make sure that you, yes, have some kind of a documented content marketing strategy, and second, that you actually follow it, iterate on it over time, but you refer to it often with your team. Some of the other differences between effective and not effective from a content marketing standpoint: 8 times more successful. They actually look at more metrics, effective content marketers, 6 versus 4. And this is really interesting. This is the point that I think is crucial. There's a much less emphasis on web traffic. As we know, web traffic by itself is really a meaningless metric. So we want to figure out how are we driving sales, how are we saving costs, how are we creating more loyal customers, how are we creating better customers. If web traffic can help us get to those things, that's fantastic, but in and of itself, web traffic by itself is not critical. And by the way, it is the #1 way that people measure their content marketing effectiveness, which makes me shed a little tear inside, actually. So we have a long way to go in our maturity level when it comes to content marketing. One little exercise that I'd love you to do with your team as you're going through this process toward documentation and really making it real is doing something we call the why strategy. So basically, when you go through the why strategy, the why exercise, what I want you to do is take a piece of paper, and I actually would like you to take a piece of paper and put why question mark at the top. And on the left-hand side of the page, I want you to list for a particular audience you're trying to target with your content. I want you to list all the ways you're trying to communicate with them. Email, newsletter, Facebook posts, Twitter, webinars like the one you're on right now. Just list, and by the way, the average is about 13 to 15 for an enterprise company. And I want you to list what is your business objective for doing that. What's the reason? Are you trying to drive sales through that? Are you trying to gain subscribers through that? What is it something about preference? So really be specific, because what we find is when we have people that are working on the blog or even working on translation and localization strategies, they don't necessarily know what the business outcomes are for that particular channel. So I want you to start with that why strategy. The second thing that I want you to start thinking about is creating a content marketing mission statement. And I want you to think about this question. So what do all media companies do that you do not do with your content? What do all media companies do that you don't do with your content? And what I found out, I grew up in publishing, and I've been on about 30 to 35 different launches of publishing properties. And in every case, when we're starting off launching to a particular audience and trying to grow that audience and change the behavior of that audience in some way, we always started out with an editorial mission statement. And it's something that most enterprises, small companies, mid-sized companies, large enterprises just simply don't do. And I'm thinking it's just odd to me that what media companies have been successful doing for so many years in building audiences, they start their strategies by creating an editorial mission statement. And for you, that is your content marketing mission statement. I'm going to give you a few examples of this, and then I'm going to go through a little bit of exercise about how you can do this for yourself, particular to an audience that you're trying to target. So this is homemadesimple.com. If you can't read it from first glance here, this is a Procter & Gamble property. They have well over 5 million people subscribed to Homemade Simple. By the way, they started this, I believe it was back in 2003, believe it or not. So we talk about content marketing being a marathon and not a sprint, and this is absolutely the case with Homemade Simple. So it's a site about how I can get organizational tips for the home, how I can get recipes so I can spend more time with my family, those types of things. And that it's a real media site that Procter & Gamble has been running for a long time. Now, they started out with a content marketing mission statement, and this is an abbreviated version, but you'll get the gist of it as we go through these examples. Enabling women to have more quality time with their families, right? They're not targeting me, they're targeting women. And what is the goal? What is the outcome? They want the person reading the content to have more quality time with their family. So that means you're not going to see anything like a 6-hour recipe on there because it doesn't go to the mission. It doesn't go to the outcome. So that is the example from a consumer company. Let's look at a B2B company. This is Indium Corporation. Indium Corporation manufactures industrial soldering equipment. So very, very sexy content. So if you feel you've got boring content, here's a real good example of somebody that can bring this to life. They started their blog in 2005, and within 18 months of starting the blog, saw a 600% increase in qualified leads. But one of the key things they did was they started with a content marketing mission statement. And here it is. And I'm going to talk about this for a second, but they have now, I believe it's 70 different blogs out there around industrial soldering equipment, and they have 21 engineers blogging to fill those 71 different blogs. So it's just interesting that they do engineer-to-engineer communications, but they started here. What's my mission? Helping engineers answer the most challenging industrial soldering questions. I'm not talking to plant managers. I'm not talking to CFOs. I'm talking to engineers. What are we trying to do? What's the outcome? We're trying to help them answer the most challenging industrial soldering questions. They're not talking about ball bearings. They're not talking about siding. They're very specific. Owning this niche, really being the leading informational provider in this area. And of course, that's proven to be true. And if you search for anything around industrial soldering equipment on the web, you are going to run into India. So let me look at this in a way that you can break your own mission statement down so you can do this for your own audience in your own organization. So let's look at Inc. magazine. Inc. is one of my favorite publications. I get giddy when it comes in the post, and I still love to get the print magazine. But they have their own content marketing mission statement. It is on their About Us page. So there's 3 different parts. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to go through the 3 parts so that you can do this for yourself. So welcome to Inc., a place where entrepreneurs and business owners can find useful information, advice, insights, resources, and inspiration for running and growing their businesses. There's 3 parts here. One is, who's the core target audience? 1. We're targeting 1. Most brands target multiple audiences. If you target multiple audiences, you're most likely irrelevant already. We've got to if we're going to cut through the clutter, we've got to be super focused, super laser targeted. We've got to focus on 1 audience. Entrepreneurs and business owners, technically 1 audience. They're targeting somebody like myself. 2, what are we going to deliver? Useful information, advice, insights. They're really talking about something very specific. If we think about it from our perspective, how much content do you send out that's actually product-focused or service-focused? Probably most of it. Most of the companies that we go into, these big billion-dollar companies, when we do an audit of their content, actually most of it is sales and marketing oriented. It's bait and switch, where we're trying to be educational, but we're really talking about a product or service that we're trying to sell. And people can sniff that out a mile away. So and if you look at what Inc. does, Inc. doesn't talk about, hey, buy advertising in the content itself. They do that outside the content. So figure out that for yourself. What are you going to deliver? And third, the most important, is the outcome for the audience. Inspiration for running and growing their businesses. They're trying to do 2 things. They're trying to basically help me drive revenue as an entrepreneur, or they're trying to help me drive profit. One or the other. That's all they're trying to do. So I want you to think of what that outcome is, and another little exercise that I love. If you do an editorial calendar, go through your editorial calendar, whether it's topic, is it a blog, what's the content type, who's person responsible for it, who's going to approve it, go all the way down the line of the spreadsheet, and then write outcome. What's in it for the audience? Are you trying to help them live a better life in some way, get a better job? Putting that down will help you save on costs immediately in the editorial process if the person creating that piece of content knows what the outcome is. So that is, when you think about creating your content marketing mission statement, I want you to do those 3 things. Define what the audience is, what are you going to deliver, and ultimately, what is the outcome going to be? And then you're probably asking, okay, well, Joe, that's fine. If I build an audience, if I do this and I choose my platform and I build an audience over time, what's the ROI? And it's interesting with the new book, the Content Inc., that I just produced, what we found out is the main thing is once we build that audience and we build subscribers that know, like, and trust us, we just start looking at the difference between those that subscribe to our content and those that don't. Do they buy more from us? Do they stay longer as customers? Do they close faster? The thing is, it just takes time to build that audience over time to do that. But I love it. I mean, there's lots of different ways to measure content marketing, but I love the idea that we're really building audience first, and then we can look at the behaviors between those people that engage in our content and those that don't. So before I pass this over to Judd and we go through this area, I want to talk just about global, because we got some of the global content strategy mix of what does an enterprise do for the most part when they look at their global strategy. And this seems to be what most people do, and I want to get more insight from Judd as he goes through his. But basically, the centralized portion of it, they centralize the overall content marketing strategy. The key themes and topics are centralized. Of course, you have the brand guidelines, and you have some distribution that's centralized. What they do is handle at the local level your translation, your localization, and your globalization. So if you're thinking about, and I know Judd's going to have a really good take on this, but this is sort of what we see in the research and how most enterprises handle what I just talked about, from setting that strategy and then looking at it from a global standpoint. So now I think we're going to go on to the right mixing in the right strategy, but from a global perspective, and how you can actually dominate from a global position looking at your content marketing. And Judd, I think I'm passing over to you, so I'd love to get your take on this from your standpoint.
Great, Joe. Thank you very much. And thanks for taking us through the first part of the presentation. I think what you said rings, as a marketer, I think what you said rings true, and I'm in total agreement. And, as far as the right strategy goes, having that right content strategy is incredibly important. But when you think about, if you're an enterprise brand doing business globally, it's important to think about that content strategy in a global context for a multilingual audience. I think your previous slide, when you're talking about global content strategy and how it is centralized and then handled at a local level, is really important. And I'm going to keep coming back to that throughout the course of my presentation. But really what I want to talk about next is I want to talk about the right message. Once you have the right content strategy in place and you feel really good that your brand is going to deliver the message to your customers and your consumers that you want it to, you have to figure out how to craft that message and be able to do it for audiences or buyers or customers everywhere that you do business around the globe. So what I thought would be a great little exercise is to take your case study examples that you did, and I'm a big fan of Inc. too, and apply that to Smartling and to talk a little bit about what our approach is to content marketing mission statements. So for Smartling, this is where we're focused right now. These are the outcomes that we are focused on. Smartling uses technology to help ambitious brands to become global ready and deliver native brand experiences to their multilingual audience. The content that we write is focused on those two outcomes, helping companies be global ready and helping them deliver native brand experiences to their multilingual audience. Yes, we're a technology company. That's really what we sell. That's the business we're in. But that's not what we talk about. We talk about how we can add value to brands and how they can carry that over to their customers and consumers and to buyers around the globe. Those are our outcomes. So I thought what you said, Joe, was really well stated, and hopefully that you give us high marks on the outcomes that we're going after in our content mission strategy. Thank you. So a couple things. Now what I want to talk a little bit about is the brands that we do business with, because most of the brands that we do business with, they come to us with very sound content strategies, and especially the enterprise companies, and they do a lot of what Joe said, which is they have a centralized content marketing team. Most often it's in the U.S. Most of the enterprise brands we work with are in the U.S. And they have a really sound strategy. But one of the problems is that while the team is centralized in the U.S., what we find is that a lot of the content strategies are centralized to a U.S. audience or really created for U.S. audiences only. And a lot of what U.S. companies do is they have this lift and drop mentality where they think that, hey, what we created here in the U.S. is great, and it worked really well with our U.S. customer base. Let's just lift and drop that into the other countries that we do business in. And that's really not the right way to go about doing this. And I kind of know this firsthand. So I spent about the last 5.5 years living in London, and the brand that I work for, the company that I work for, was arguably the world's largest and most successful marketing automation SaaS platform. And my job was to run UK marketing and to break into 3 European markets, France, Germany, and Stockholm. And so I knew that I needed to go to market with a different approach or to deliver my message in the right way to each of those markets. And I couldn't adopt a lift and drop strategy. That just wasn't going to work. For all of you on the line that are doing business internationally, you know that when you speak to a customer in one market, you really should be speaking to customers in your other markets in a different way, in the way that they want to be spoken to. So for instance, for me, I knew that when I delivered my marketing materials into the UK, thought leadership was something that really resonated with buyers and customers in the UK. When I delivered my message in Germany, thought leadership wasn't as valued by buyers and customers there. Buyers and customers in Germany want the facts. They want data sheets, not thought leadership. So I needed to figure out how to deliver my message to two different audiences or multiple audiences in different ways, and that was really important. And one of the problems that we see with an approach, a centralized approach to content strategy that isn't built for a global audience, is that people always think about the need for translation at the very pointy end of a project. They produce a bunch of great content, they have a great content distribution strategy, and they want to go to market. And then, oh yeah, at the last minute, now we need to translate this content into other languages. That's not the right way to go about it, because what happens is you compromise a lot of the great work you've done by trying to shoehorn translation in at the last minute. Smart global content strategies are not delivered at the very end of a project. They're thought of at the very beginning of a project, or the very beginning of the conception of a strategy. That's where translation takes place. Translation in and of itself, a lot of brands around the world doing global business have to deal with that, and they think about translation as a one-off, something that needs to get done, a headache, because that's generally what it can be thought of. Translation strategy is a growth strategy. And B2B and B2C brands grow by acquiring new customers and improving conversion rates. And brands that are doing business in a global context need to do that for multiple markets. That's why translation strategy is not something that needs to be done, but translation strategy is thought of as a growth strategy. Very important. Now, one of the things that we tell the brands that we work with is, you should be focused on delivering native brand experiences. A lot of brands want to deliver a brand experience. A brand is not what the brand thinks it is. A brand is what customers think it is. And you want to make sure that the brand experience you're delivering around the world feels native. It feels like it was created and delivered for particular audiences all over the globe. That's really important. While brand messages are universal, they need to be crafted and delivered for the different audiences that they serve. And it's not really the expectations being set by the brand, it's expectations set by the customer. And in order to deliver on those expectations, when it comes to disseminating your content globally or executing your global content strategy, there's really three things you need to think about. And this goes back to the slide that Joe had, and where he talked about handling global content strategy at a local level. There's three things that are really important. One of them is translation. Proper translation is essential. If you have some local customers clicking on a French website and they find that a translation is really poor and that message isn't delivered correctly, or they feel that they're not being served the right way, they're going to bounce off that website quickly and they may never return. You also need to focus on localization. It's not just about great translation. It's about doing it in the right local context, understanding the local norms, or the way people speak, or the way certain phrases or catchphrases are either used or not used in particular countries around the globe. And then ultimately, it's about globalization as well. And just being really aware of what's happening around the globe in each one of the markets that you serve. And while this may not be a true language issue, it's certainly things that impact language. Things like the variances between different markets, what's happening with local currencies, customs, behaviors, different personas, and how they approach selling situations or buying situations. Really important. So translation, localization, globalization, really important when you want to deliver a native brand experience. Now, additionally, branded content needs to resonate locally. And in order for branded content to resonate locally, smart brands need to create multilingual content strategies. And these multilingual content strategies resonates with customers in each global market that they serve. So while Joe talked about having smart content strategy mission statements, making sure that those content strategy mission statements are consistent around the globe, but also tailored to each region. That's really important. And when that's done, then content resonates in every market that they serve with every customer that they serve. Really important. One of the customers that we work with, or one of the brands that we work with, is Hotel Tonight. And Hotel Tonight came to us early on with a very similar situation about what we talked about before. How do we take our really smart global content strategy and deliver native brand experiences to all the many different regions that we serve? And for them, for Hotel Tonight, being global ready is critical to their business model. It's absolutely critical to be able to serve up content and that is translated properly, that is localized properly, that it takes globalization into consideration. And they came to us and they said, look, there's three things that we want to do. We want to scale quickly, right? We want to scale our business quickly in multiple markets around the globe. We want to translate all different types of content. And we want to improve workflows within our teams throughout the organization. And so that was something that we could handle. And we worked with them to help them create solutions that ended up allowing them to launch 7 new countries in 3 months and do that faster and launch into different companies faster than they've ever done it before. And now they manage 30 different countries through Smartling technology. The second thing we did was we helped them manage their content through all the different properties that they have, whether that be their website, whether it be their multiple apps, or multiple apps on multiple platforms. We helped them do that efficiently and effectively. And the last thing, they wanted to improve workflows. And when you improve workflows, you save money. And Hotel Tonight has seen a savings of over 40% on translation costs just by using Smartling technology. So in delivering the right message, brands have to meet the expectations of consumers in every market that they serve. And in doing so, they have to deliver really smart multilingual content strategies that don't just speak to one audience, but that send one message to multiple audiences and do that in a really smart way. And in doing so, their content will resonate with people all over the globe. Now I'm going to take us back to that one slide that Joe showed us before about global content strategy and how centralization of strategy is really important when done right, and then handling at a local level is really important when done right. And when you do those two things right, then you really are on the path to being global ready. You have the right strategy in place, and then you are able to deliver the right message through the methodology, right, through a better translation process. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the right technology. We talked about the right strategy. We talked about the right message. And the right technology is arguably the most important part of the 3 different components to being global ready. Once you have your content, how are you going to deliver it? How are you going to translate it? And how are you going to deliver it to your multiple markets around the globe? Now, there's something that we affectionately refer to here at Smartling as the translation dumpster fire. If any of you online have ever seen a dumpster fire, they happen quickly and they grow out of control even more quickly. Dumpster fires are raging fires that are somewhat contained, but can explode at any moment. And that's kind of what happens from a traditional translation process. Traditional translation process, the best way for me to describe that, let me take you back to my story about having to launch different markets in Europe. So when we launched into 3 different markets in Europe, we had 3 different languages that we had to focus on. And it wasn't just the language, it was all the content that we had to create. It was working with our different translation partners. It was making sure that we delivered the brand message. This was a real struggle. And we were launching all 3 of these markets within 6 months of each other. So, I experienced a lot of the pain that is found in these dumpster fires. And really, that revolved around a few things. Inefficient workflows between the people on my team and our translation service partners. Wasted resource. That meant either budget, people's time that had to spend extra time, rechecking translation, checking quality of translation, inefficient workflows, and then also, it was really around people. Poor translation puts a very negative it presents a very negative picture to the people that have to deal with translation on your team. It takes them away from the work that is most valuable. It takes them away from creative native brand experiences for their customers. So these dumpster fires, they get out of control quickly, and they're hard to contain. So when in order to avoid these types of dumpster fire situations and keep your team away from creating proper native brand experiences, you have to look to technology. And Smartling, first and foremost, is a technology company. Our technology, it is a SaaS platform, and our technology incorporates the best of both worlds. Automated SaaS platform that every marketer uses today as part of their go-to-market strategy, but then also the best of human translation. And you can't have you can't have great translation without the other. Technology, agile translation technology, what that can help you deliver are four key things. It delivers an automated process, right? And an automated process means centralizing work between brands and the translators that brands choose to work with. It automates the internal process as well. There's a lot of back and forth when doing different translations, and there are many people throughout the organization that are part of this. And automating the internal process is one of the most important things that can happen, or is one of the most important results that comes from using technology. And ultimately, the automation allows the brand marketer not to focus on the translation itself, but to focus on delivering those all-important native brand experiences. The second reason agile translation technology is a good solution is that brands can focus on translation and localizing the translation of content and localization of content as quickly as it's created within the platform. You are able to work on all of your different content properties in context. You can see it in real time working with your translator. If you are rushing to hit a deadline and you want to eliminate a lot of that back and forth that may cause errors when people are rushing around, you can work together within the platform and look at things happen in real time. And in doing so, you eliminate those errors. You can work with your vendors and be able to manage them properly. There's real-time transparency to what is happening in the process. And most importantly, you have a dashboard that creates some insights and tells you where you are at in the process. It tells you how well you are translating, and it keeps you on your path to getting the job done. The third thing is really global brand consistency. And for an enterprise company that is managing a brand in multiple markets around the globe, brand consistency is most important. And one of the key components of that is translation memory. Translation memory is essential to the translation process. What it does is it records all of the different words, the typical or the frequent words that you use throughout your translation, and it keeps them in your own special translation memory so that you don't have to keep repeating translation in your future content projects. So essentially, not only is your system becoming smarter every time you use it, you actually save money because you don't have to spend money on retranslating words that you've already translated numerous times. So it's really important. So global brand consistency allows you to work fast, it's affordable, and it creates that consistency throughout the different content and the messages and the words that you use. And then lastly, there is seamless integration. Right now, their content platform fragmentation, specifically within CMS, that's happening everywhere. And every brand wants to work in the CMS or the different platform that they're using today. And they don't want to have to bounce around to different technologies. So, one of the things with the Smartling translation, with the Agile translation engine, is that we have numerous connectors, and we have an open API that allows our technology to seamlessly integrate into whatever technology that you are using, so that it just makes it easier for your workflows and your process, and you're able to work in the way that you want to work. It's really important. And then next, really, from a technology perspective, it impacts business. It's not just about creating proper workflows, but it's about impacting your business. And we find that Agile translation technology impacts business in 5 key ways. It allows you to get to market faster. Really important when you are launching into new markets and you know that A, you want to capitalize on a certain opportunity, you want to hit a deadline, or you want to beat your customers to the punch. Faster time to market. Improved focus. When you don't have to worry about the translation, you focus on what matters most, delivering native brand experiences. You focus on your marketing objectives. You focus on creating better content. Thirdly, complete control. Technology keeps everybody on the same page. It allows you to work with your translators of choice. It allows you to see where you're at from a dashboard perspective. You know what is happening at all times. Really important because you need to hit deadlines. You need to have cost control. Technology helps you manage through all that. It is scalable. It is a SaaS platform, so it is infinitely scalable for any size business. If you are operating in 2 or 3 businesses today, and you want markets today, and you're going to operate in 10 global markets within 3 years, you don't just want to buy a point-in-time translation solution. You want to buy a solution that will scale with your business based on your aspirations. And then ultimately, greater efficiency. The back and forth process that translation has been for many years, that is really where the dumpster fire starts. That lack of efficiency, not knowing where you're at in the process, having to worry about too many errors, that is really where the pain is. So these 5 things are what impacts business the most, and most any brand out there that we speak to is focused on these 5 things. So it all comes back to one important thing: delivering native brand experiences. So that's what using the right technology allows you to do. Okay? Right technology takes translation, the headaches of translation out of the picture, and allows you to focus on your marketing, allows you to deliver native brand experiences. And taking it back to Joe's slide again, you have the right strategy, you have the right message, and now adding the right technology here is incredibly important. And when you do these 3 things, you will be able to deliver on your global content strategy. So ultimately, why does this all matter? Good question. It all matters because these 3 things allow you to be global ready. It allows you to deliver on the ambition of your company to be a global company, to operate in multiple markets, to have customers around the world loving your brand. And, this is, for my money, this is the most important slide of the presentation, or at least my part of the presentation, is the business value of being global ready. What does that mean? The business value of being global ready means that you create better relationships with your customers around the globe, and you have better conversion rates because of that. It also means that you acquire more customers around the world. Creating better relationships create customers, and hopefully lifetime customers that stay with you for the duration, that stay with you as long as you continue to deliver those great native brand experiences. And once you acquire more customers, then you're going to start to see exponential growth from all of the international markets that you're breaking into or you hope to do business in. And then ultimately, technology. Technology improves workflows and reduces costs, because at the end of the day, reducing costs is important, because if you reduce costs from a process that is otherwise arduous and very costly, it allows you to take those funds and put them back into your marketing, and it allows you to focus on your customers and delivering those all-important native brand experiences. So that's really it from our portion of the presentation. I hope that was insightful. And Joe, I think that between what you're talking about from a strategy point of view, I think that we've kind of helped you round that out from a message and technology point of view.
Fantastic, great presentation.
So thanks so much, guys. I think we've actually got quite a bit of questions from the audience today. So we'll jump right in. We have about 15 minutes to do a nice Q&A here. The first one, Joe, is actually for you. It's about content marketing strategy, and the question is, what does a documented content marketing strategy even look like, and how should a retailer approach this? So looking at it from the retail perspective.
Well, we could do a whole webinar just on that, Drew, but let me sum it up in a minute.
Try to tee it up, Joe.
No, I don't want to take up all the time. So what I want you to think about is, first of all, you got to plan. What's the business case? why are you doing this in the first place? And we talked about some of these on the webinar. Who is that specific audience you're trying to target? So from a retailing standpoint, you're not going to have a content marketing plan targeting every kind of audience out there. So who's the specific one that you can make an impact with? And then maybe the third point, before we get into channels, we haven't even created a piece of content yet, and we're still in strategy mode. What's the story? What's the differentiated story that you're trying to tell? And I think this is where everyone missteps, because if you look at so everyone on this call today, think about the content you're creating. Is it different than anything else out there? Are you adding value that's different from anything else that can be found out there? And for the most cases, it probably isn't. So you want to go through that differentiated strategy, and I'll just have anybody that's interested in kind of figuring out what that framework is, just type into Google CMI framework. It's a 7-step process that we go through from planning, audience, story. Then you pick your channels. Then in talking what Judd was going through, then you get your process and workflow in order, and then that'll lead to measurement. Feedback mechanisms are all in place. So it's a great question, but I would just say the end of the thing specifically for the retailer, there's so much content, and I don't know what specifically you're selling, but you have to really figure out what's that one audience persona that we can really make an impact on, because you probably have multiple audiences buying stuff from you, and what are you trying to do, and where can you make an impact, and how is that story different from anything else that's out there. And then the last thing is you have to consistently deliver, and what we found out, we talk about this in the book, what is the one content type you're going to focus on? Is it audio, video, textual? What is the one platform you're going to focus on, like a media company does? Is it iTunes? Is it YouTube? Is it your website or blog? Consistently deliver over time. And I think if you start there and you look and plan that, I think you'll have yourself a really solid documented strategy in place.
Excellent, Joe. Thank you. Judd, we have one for you, definitely getting to the technology that you were talking about. It says, technology is changing the language market landscape. How can translators remain relevant in their changed roles?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I hope a translator was asking that. For us, translators are extremely important because, while we do have a technology solution, technology is not going to solve this alone. It's because ultimately, it's people talking to people. Technology improves the workflows and all those things that I was talking about earlier, but you still need to hire strong translators to make sure you're delivering high-quality translations, that things are localized properly, that any kind of globalization is taken into consideration. Translators are extremely important to this process. I mean, someday the machines will take over the world and we'll all be out of the picture, but still then, I bet you anything, translators will be left standing because, they're the ones that deliver the great translations. Technology helps them be great, but they're the ones that deliver great translations.
Fantastic. Joe, we have another one for you. It says, I am a CEO. What is my most effective measure of performance in terms of content marketing?
All right, Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, let me go through this one for you. It depends on your goal. I hate to say this, but it depends on what your goal is. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to generate sales? Are you trying to save costs? Are you trying to create happier customers, more loyal customers, keep them longer? What are you ultimately trying to do? And then we'll figure out how we can measure that depending on where you're going. So I think that when we talked about, the question when I got to the end of the presentation was, what do your subscribers do? Because your goal is to try to build an audience. Like, there's a lot of people that are just going to do content marketing to move people down the buyer's journey, which is absolutely fine to do that. And there's different content practices that you can use with what Judd's saying, which is absolutely the way you should look at it. But if you're saying, hey, what is my goal if I want to be a purist from a content marketing standpoint? I want to build an audience, and I want to understand what the behaviors of that audience, how are those behaviors different than people that don't engage in my content? I'll give you an example. So, TD Ameritrade does a magazine called Think Money Magazine. It goes to traders, that heavy traders. They trade 50, 100, 150 times a day. They send the magazine to them called Think Money, and what they found, it took them a while to get this data, but what they found out is that those people that subscribe to that publication and engage in that consistently over time trade 5 times more than those that don't. That was their goal. Their goal is to educate their customer base, educate that audience in such a way that they're incentivized to trade more. And that's what their goal was, and that's what they were able to do. So I would go back to the business case. and I really look at why you're doing it. Why are you creating all this content? We don't just want it to be a waste of time. We want to actually make an impact on the business. So why are you going to do that? And then as you build an audience over time, then you can start to see the differences between what your audience does and what people that don't subscribe to your content do. And the difference that's how you're going to measure content marketing right there.
Fantastic. Judd, we have I think a resource question here. It says, if translations cannot be covered in-house, what are the best options out there, particularly in terms of technology?
Yeah, another great question. I think first and foremost, from my experience, and I think from all the brands that we talk with, covering translations in-house is a really arduous task, and it really is something that should be outsourced, and there are great solutions out there. I think from a technology standpoint, if you're listening on the webinar, I think our technology is a great solution. I think it's a great option for you. It's fantastic. But I think what you should watch out for are really thinking that something like machine translation is going to do all of your heavy lifting for you. If you're looking to translate one document, machine translation might work for you. But otherwise, if you're looking for a solution, like I said, not a point-in-time fix, but a solution that will scale with your business as you're looking to enter multiple international markets, then you need to look for technology that can scale along with you. And support that. Again, we talked about translators before, and support that with the right human translation.
Excellent, and actually right on top of that is a timing question, Judd. So, when should I begin translating my content, and should I start once we have our English content fleshed out?
Great question. I think it all depends. It's subjective based on, what your plans are. But I guess kind of what I was saying before, I think one of the fallacies that we see is people think about translating content, at the very end of a project. You have a launch date for a particular campaign, or a new white paper is going to be launched, or what have you. And people don't think until the 11th hour, oh, now we need to translate this. And that can do a couple things. One, it can force you to miss a delivery date, right, when you're going to launch something, or it could force you to have an uneven launch date where you're just launching something in the U.S. and maybe you're not launching, and then you're not launching at the same time around the globe, which might have been your original intention. We see that often. I think that you should start thinking about multilingual content strategies when you start thinking about your content strategy, right? Think about your multilingual audience when you're conceptualizing what your content strategy should be. Doing that will tell you when you need to think about doing the actual translation. Don't just think about doing translation. That happens at the very end of a project. Think about a multilingual audience and how you need to treat them as part of your overall content strategy, and do that way up front in your thinking, because in doing so, then you'll be able to see great opportunities in how you could create those native brand experiences if you didn't do that at the beginning. If you just leave it to the last minute. Don't wait to the last minute, I think is the easiest way to answer that question.
And it's really about all of your overall global strategy, not just the translation.
Absolutely.
So two questions here that actually I think can go together. One is specific. They're both specific for Smartling. So it says, how does Smartling differ from a translation agency? And then also, how many languages can the platform handle? Can it translate?
Yeah, okay, great questions. They do go together. I think first and foremost, how we differ, Smartling is a technology company. Technology is what we deliver. Technology is what enterprise brands use to translate their multilingual content. That's what we are. We do have a marketplace of translators. There are other translators around the globe that use our content, but we're not a translation agency. We are a technology company. Now, translation agencies use our content use our platform, and our platform can translate any language on the planet that needs to be translated, because really our technology is just technology. And if you need to translate content in French or Swahili, you can do that so long as you find the right translators that use our content. So it's really agnostic in terms of language.
So we had a question earlier, I think, from the point of view of the translator, and now we're getting one that's more from the brand side. So it's pretty basic, but I think there's an important answer here. How can I choose the right translator? So what's right for me? What's right for us?
That's a great question. A lot of times we have brands that are already working with translators, and they're using a different solution than Smartling. And once they transfer over and use the Smartling solution, they can still continue to do business with the translators they prefer. So that's one way to answer that. The other way is there's many groups and there's many ways to evaluate translators and find out who's delivering the best translations in the market. A lot of times when we work with brands and we bring them on to use Smartling solution, we help them find the right translators. Because we work with so many around the globe, we think we have an idea of who does the best work.
And this actually, I think, might dovetail right into what you just were talking about. It says, what would you recommend as the first step to learning about the nuances of a new locale where you have no team members there? Can accurate and up-to-date information be obtained on a budget?
Well, I guess on a budget's relative. The amount of you get out what you put in. But I think let me answer this one way. Not having a team member living there, I think that's a common situation that we see, especially with brands that are maybe entering one or two markets for the first time, and it costs a lot of money to put people in market, so that always isn't an option. If it is, my recommendation is put in-country marketers in place as soon as possible. They are the people that understand the market better than anyone, especially better than an American brand marketer who's probably never even traveled over into one of those countries trying to serve customers with native brand experiences. It hardly ever works out. But if you do need to do some research on a budget, yeah, it's definitely available. There are many different research bodies where you could pick up on more stats-driven type information that'll help you make decisions. But I think you come down to relying on the translators and the people that are doing the localization. They're the ones that have true local knowledge, and they could be a great resource.
Excellent. This question here, I think, might actually be for both of you, so I think you guys can decide how to best tackle it. This says, we're finding that quite a bit of our content doesn't make sense to translate because the context isn't relevant in other countries. Is this common? And then it says, or do we need to be rethinking our content strategies entirely?
Well, I'll take the first shot at it. It's very, from what we've seen, it's really, really common. I mean, it's the one reason why we've been focusing more on intelligent content. What we're seeing right now in the marketplace, and this goes straight into translation and localization, is that most content is just created, and then we're doing a lot of cutting and pasting afterward because that's how we have it set up, instead of getting it to a point where we're using common terminology up front. We have an agreed upon terminology, and we're really set with our strategy. We really understand it. We know the moving parts that are in it, and then we move forward with that, and instead of doing the cut and paste. So if we do that, we set that up firsthand with the strategy, then that makes everything with the translation and localization process work, because as you're going to get into a lot of things are not going to make sense in a certain locale, as Judd was saying. So you really sort of have to move it back, and then you have to make decisions on, hey, we are not going to publish this kind of content. We are going to publish this kind of content to that particular locale. But I mean, I'll let Judd take the last part of this one. But that's what we see, where we're still in this, oh, here's all the U.S. English content that we have. Then how do we get this all out, instead of planning for it ahead of time and then understanding that through the content creation processes, this is how we want to use it from not only just a U.S.-centric standpoint, but from a global standpoint.
Yeah, Joe, I think you nailed the answer. I think the only thing I'll add a personal note. When I was launching into other markets, I used to take, this was my rule of thumb. I used to use the old standby, the 80-20 rule, and say I'm going to take 80% of what the U.S. created, because I'll know that I'll be on brand if I do that, and that last 20%, I'm going to localize that to my other markets. I'm going to make sure that I take that corporate brand message and then make sure I put a spin on it so that it resonates with the people in the different markets that I'm serving.
I think we have time for just one last one, and I think it might be a quick one. But Judd, you alluded to the native brand experience, and there's a question here. It says, what are some examples of businesses who are doing a great job of providing a native brand experience?
Well, I think, the case study that we showed you was, Hotels Tonight. I think they're doing a great job. I think, and I'll talk specifically about some of the customers that we work with, so I can put my money where my mouth is. But, we work with the likes of British Airways and Intercontinental Hotel Group, Spotify, GoPro, Shinola. These customers are doing it the right way. And it's evident in their business. And if you look at each of these companies and how many different countries that they're doing business in, they're getting it right, because not only are they doing well in the countries they're in, they're breaking new markets all the time.
Thanks so much, and I do think we're just about out of time, guys, but I really want to thank Joe and Judd for some just phenomenal information on going global and what it takes and how you should be managing your content strategy when doing that. On behalf of Smartling and Target Marketing, I want to thank you for attending today's webinar. Please be sure to check out our webinar page to get information on all of our archived and upcoming webinars. And if you would take just a minute to fill out the brief feedback survey that's about to appear on your screen next, we'd be very grateful. All the feedback we get from our attendees really influences the webinars that we bring to our audience in the future. And I certainly hope to see all of you at the next Target Marketing webinar. Take care.